What is the meaning of life? This is the tough question that is simultaneously the most pressing, the most difficult to answer, and the most elusive. Careful thinkers often avoid it, aware that this issue is open-ended, that defining the meaning of life is inherently a big task, and that the responses aren't necessarily absolute facts that can be supported by logic and argument. However, life is something that we need to deal with, and in dealing with it we need to define its purpose. Mabuhay. This is Owen. In this lesson we will be looking into the meaning of life in the context of certain philosophical thoughts and on the metaphorical meaning of life. As such, we can be able to reflect on the meaning of our own life. Our lesson deals with life's meaning, in which it will be difficult to provide a universal definition. As such, this lesson will be looking into the definition of life by different schools of philosophy and by well-known metaphorical definitions of life. In so doing, the following are the questions that will facilitate the understanding of the topics of the lesson. 1. What is the meaning of life according to the different philosophical thoughts? What does each definition mean? 2. What are the most common metaphorical definitions of life? What does each metaphor mean? Reflect on your answer to the question so as to evaluate your own definition of life. Can you sum up life's meaning in a single word? In response to these questions, our first topic is on the meaning of life as described by the different schools of philosophy. Thus the topic question: what is the meaning of life according to the different philosophical thoughts? Although it may be naive, there is nothing wrong with seeking a straightforward response to the seemingly straightforward question of why we exist. Here, we represented the most well-known philosophical approaches to this issue during the previous 5,000 years. If we are to observe, all philosophical thoughts about the meaning of life appear to belong to one of the following four categories. First, there is a purpose to life. Second, life has a personal purpose. Third, life is meaningless. Fourth, life has a mysterious or unexplained purpose. If we follow the chronological development of philosophy, all philosophies, roughly speaking, go in the following order. First, people turn to God and supernatural powers. Then, they search for significance within the society. Next, they look at the individual person, and ultimately, they look at mankind as a whole. The first attempt by humanity to explain its existence is natural pantheism. Natural pantheism. The idea that God is everywhere and that there is one all-encompassing God who is present in everything is known as pantheism. Living in harmony with all that is what gives life purpose. Pantheism is an age-old concept that was formalized as a distinct philosophy in ethics by the Dutch philosopher Baruch Spinoza in 1675. Theism. The belief that there's a supreme being or God is known as theism. The meaning of life is then prescribed by the God that one believes in. Since the beginning of time, people have practiced theism in a variety of ways, based on how they perceived their deity to be. Taoism. Taoism offers people a painless way of finding life's meaning through wu-wei action without intention or naturalness. Finding the Tao or the Way is the result of such action. Nevertheless, the path cannot be comprehended by means of any justification or deed. The Tao Te Ching by Chinese philosopher Laozi, who lived between the 6th and 4th century BC, is the major source on Taoism, and it states that the Tao only manifests itself when a person simply is. Determinism. Determinism is the belief that all events are the result of previously existent causes. In a world that is predetermined, nothing can be changed, hence there is no such thing as free will. If there is a reason to life, it is predetermined, and there is nothing we can do to comprehend it. Determinism is an old theory that was revived in 18th-century mathematics. René Descartes, a French philosopher and mathematician, is one of its well-known representatives. Confucianism. Confucius, a Chinese philosopher who lived from 551–479 BC, advised us to cultivate ren, or the feeling of altruism one has when caring for one's parents and children. Confucius provided numerous explanations of virtue, one of which is as follows: Now the man of perfect virtue, wishing to be established himself, seeks also to establish others. Wishing to be enlarged himself, he seeks also to enlarge others. To be able to judge of others by what is nigh in ourselves, this may be called the art of virtue. Mohism. The Mohists put forth the idea of inclusive love Genai, which they define as a form of unbiased concern for fellow humans that embraces everyone in society. Following the Fa approach, in which one's psychological state of caring and the positive activity that arises from it are two sides of the same coin, is what gives life its meaning. Mozi, a collection of 71 writings published by the Chinese philosopher Mozi, is the foundational work of Mohism. Solipsism. According to the solipsistic theory, a person can only be positive that their mind exists. The Greek sophist Gorgias 483–375 is credited with coining the term solipsism. He is quoted as having said, "Nothing exists. Even if something exists, nothing can be known about it. Even if something could be known about it, knowledge about it can't be communicated to others." The meaning of life according to solipsism can only be known by one's mind and not in relation to other beings. Cynicism. The Cynics, who first appeared in the 4th century BC, make an effort to provide people with the prospect of enjoyment and release from pain in the face of uncertainty. The meaning of life is to be mentally clear and self-sufficient. This is eudaimonia. A person must liberate himself from outside forces, such as wealth, fame, and power, in order to become self-sufficient. Hedonism. Hedonism provides us a way of life based on avoiding pain and enjoying pleasure. Even simple pleasures like eating, dancing, and listening to music have importance. Democritus, a Greek philosopher who lived from approximately 460 to 370 BC, developed the idea of hedonism from earlier conceptions. Platonism. The Greek philosopher Plato believed that the pursuit of knowledge is what makes life worthwhile. Platonism, in a nutshell, is the belief that abstractions known as pure forms exist. An abstraction is anything that is neither physical nor temporal. Even if it is entirely non-physical, it is nonetheless knowable. The meaning of life is to become aware of pure forms. According to Plato, we are all born with all knowledge inside us, but we have to recall it or rediscover it, which is a concept called anamnesis. Chinese legalism. The legalists were a group that emerged in the 4th century BC and held the view that morality cannot be relied upon since people are naturally selfish. Although humans are naturally selfish, the acquisition of talents that make a person's work valuable to the state and so benefit society is what gives life its meaning. The Book of Lord Shang, penned by the politician who propelled the Qin dynasty to the top of Asia, is the earliest work of legalist thought. Epicureanism. Epicurus was a materialist ancient Greek philosopher who proposed that the meaning of life was in achieving sustainable mental pleasures which lead to a state of tranquility and freedom from fear or ataraxia. Man must seek mental pleasures because they exist in the past, the present, and the future, while physical pleasures are fleeting. The poem On the Nature of Things, or De Rerum Nature, compiles the core arguments and theories of Epicureanism. Quietism. According to quietists, the function of philosophy is to highlight linguistic ambiguities and the problems posed to philosophers. The question of what life's meaning is presumes that we comprehend what the terms meaning and life mean. Any attempt to define the meaning of either word exposes the meaninglessness of the inquiry, making it impossible to understand the purpose of existence by posing such a query. Both Eastern and Western philosophies have aspects of quietism, with Greek Pyrrhonism emphasizing non-verbal suspension of judgment or epiche, and Taoism being recognized for its avoidance of language. Aristotelianism. Aristotle, a Greek philosopher, reminded us that no one leads a good life in order to accomplish another objective. Being a good person is adequate in and of itself. The aim is to be good. According to Aristotle, virtue and ethical principles are not abstract ideas. Humans are aware of what is right. The best-known example of Aristotle's thought is his Nicomachean Ethics. Stoicism. The goal of the Stoics is for you to be free of desire for pleasure and fear of suffering. One can only be free to behave justly via wisdom. Through reasoned activity that does not defy the natural principles, a person becomes wise. The Hellenistic philosopher Zeno of Citium established Stoicism. The only full Stoic writings that exist now are those of Seneca, Epictetus, and Roman Emperor Marcus Aurelius, whose diary Meditations details his journey to enlightenment. Modern humanism. Humanism emphasizes that people's fate in this world is ultimately up to them. Thus, the meaning of life is to advance and aid other people. Subjectivism. Subjectivists contend that each person's interpretation of the meaning of life is unique and influenced by their mental condition. A person's life is more significant as they accomplish their personal goals, which they set for themselves. Subjectivists contest the idea that one should pursue subjective goals in spite of objective values in life. René Descartes is credited with introducing subjectivism with his famous thought experiment, I think, therefore, I exist. Liberalism. The liberals believe that a person is naturally free to make decisions without asking anyone else's consent. Anyone who wants to restrict freedoms must first demonstrate why doing so is important. Therefore, defending individual liberty from political coercion, which may or may not be justified, is the meaning of life. The cornerstone text of liberal philosophy is two treatises of government by English philosopher and physician John Locke. Kantianism. According to Kantianism, all human activity should be evaluated in light of a general principle or maxim. A person failed in their obligation to treat people fairly if their actions go against a principle. Therefore, the meaning of existence is to fulfill your obligation to uphold universal truths. The Critique of Pure Reason, written by German philosopher Immanuel Kant, is the source of Kantianism. Nihilism. Nihilism, also called pessimism, is the idea that there is nothing that can give existence any significance. The nihilists believe that there is something about us that stops us from discovering purpose in life. It might be a human inclination to be unsatisfied, to always seek something out, or to become bored after one finds it. Nihilism has a long history, but among philosophers, the phrase will to power by German philosopher Friedrich Nietzsche is most frequently used to describe it. Pragmatism. In general, their perspectives imply that we should pursue a practical understanding of life rather than the truth about life. Living worthily depends on what you do with your life. The meaning of life is to do the activity that most contributes to the most human good over the longest period of time. William James on Habit, Will, Truth, and the Meaning of Life covers the subject. Logical empiricism. The idea of logical empiricism, also known as logical positivism, is that the only type of knowledge available to us is facts scientifically verifiable and observable. Anything else is irrelevant. Only one's actual experience can provide a meaning of life. We can't tell if there's more to life than what we can see. The Vienna Circle was the logical positivists' most influential group. Existentialism. Existentialists believe that we all begin life with existential angst, or anxiety over the apparent meaninglessness of our lives. To find meaning in life, a person must first determine their own values and then take action to live by them. The first existentialist text is German philosopher Martin Heidegger's work, Being and Time, which is an exploration of the being that we ourselves are. Absurdism. The question, what is the meaning of life, is destined to fail because of the conflict between the human mind that desperately seeks meaning and a world where everything falls short of having a finite, immutable meaning. The search for meaning in life is a Sisyphean task. The more you look, the less you understand it. The absurdist French philosopher Albert Camus proposed that people should embrace the absurdity of our existence and then proceed to willfully live their lives. The defining work on absurdism is Albert Camus' work The Myth of Sisyphus.